So that's a draw. That's a good game. So we see another game. So 4.5 to 3.5 in this stage. I don't even know how many bullet games they're playing. I have to go to work soon. It's Saturday afternoon, but my boss asked me to come to work, which is pretty lame, I must say. If you want to be a cool boss, don't do that. So that is life, though, in this. That's my life, at least. I don't know if it's your life, but so Shankland has 4.5 points to 3.5 in this chess death match on March 31st, 2012. F6 is played there in the 1-minute stage. I think the bishop is going to come back to F7, and then he's going to try to play E5 is his idea. Seems like a good idea, but the knight does come towards the center first to overprotect C4 and E4. B5 is played to overprotect this square, but then C4 is played, breaking through. If pawn takes, then the knight takes back, which I do think we'll see. Oh, but also c6 falls to the bishop, which could be good. The knight decides to move. Oh, attacking the bishop. The bishop is defended only once. The bishop has to retreat. Now you could play like bishop takes c6 if you wanted. He does. Then he plays d5. He says, this is too awesome, too much fun. Bishop takes here. Knight takes back. Pawn takes. Rook takes. Knight moves to d5, blockading the isolated pawn. We talked about this earlier in the video. So we could play like takes. No, I don't know. So much chess. I've been watching for hours. I feel just exhausted. The rook decides to move to c5, attacking the knight. The knight retreats. Pawn takes, pawn takes. Queen moves to h4. The queen has invaded, I suppose. But the d6 pawn falls, but g4 falls, which has to be more important. But he retreats the bishop. What about bishop here? Is that good? No, because he plays pawn up in response. 37 seconds to 26 seconds. Shankland is, I think, up just a little tiny bit in the match. It is close. Bishop to d5 is played. Queen can exchange, though. And now e4 is played. The takes, and the knight takes, the rook takes back. So a little tactic was found with the idea that I was seeing. The rook takes here, but then the bishop comes here attacking both these squares. Bishop takes on f2, which is pretty good. He can't take back because then just the rook takes. So now this is setting up some checkmating possibilities. Oh, he's threatening to push this pawn. That could be pretty awesome, I think. The knight moves. Now he doesn't have a mating threat. The knight retreats. Bishop f4. This pawn is pretty good. Pins the knight. Ooh. Pins the knight. And then if king here, then just check. Or check this way, huh? He queens, and then takes the knight with check, and then moves back. And now his plan is just go here, here, here. No, he retreats the bishop this way. Very suspicious. But the bishop does come back. He is able to win that pawn. Now he has a pawn and a bishop for a rook, which I'm pretty sure he can win. That's a pretty cool move. See that? The king can't take because the rook takes. If the rook takes, then he's just up a bishop and a pawn versus a king, which is too easy. So e4, c5 is played. This is a Sicilian. This is, I think, the first Sicilian we've seen. So people are switching up their openings in the bullet stage. Looks like a dragon and possibly a Yugoslav attack. Black has not fianchettoed his dark squared bishop quite yet. We see a4 is played, so it's not going to be a opposite side castling slugfest. Pawn takes back. The knight comes forward. Knight takes the bishop. The knight has to take back. So Shankland won the last game. He's up in the match by a little bit. I'm going to have to go in a second. Knight takes d4 to go to work on a Saturday. I can't believe it. I want this match to end. I want to see who wins. Shankland, 5.5 to 3.5. Takes. It's pretty exciting chess. This bishop is pretty good. I think that... I don't know. This knight's pretty good too. Shankland is good at making good outposted knights, I think. So the bishop's pretty good, but it's not that much better than the knight in this position. He plays f6 and king up, sort of a safe position. B4 is a passed pawn, so he's going to try to push that push it wisely. Knight retreats. Rook moves over. Pawn moves up. Don't want to move the pawn too quickly. Well, maybe you do. Pawn moves up again. E3 is E3 could fall. King has to come forward. Pretty dangerous. Is he going to push the pawn again? He does. Takes is played. After queen takes, there's check. And then king over, he takes the queen. But then this queen even queens. So, pretty exciting game here. But now there's not a mate. He checks on f2. The king is going to move here. It looks like there's no more checking squares immediately, which could mean that Shankland is able to queen this pawn. The queen's come off, and the bishop has to retreat. He's going to have to sacrifice the bishop. So almost a winning situation there, but it just didn't quite work out. Now Shankland is up the knight. It looks like Shankland is ahead in the death match. What a close match it has been. So g3 is played, h2, and this pawn is passed. I like this passed pawn. He's pushing this pawn. Seems good. Knight moves to f4. Now if the rook moves, he can take the pawn. He attacks the knight. He decides to sacrifice the knight and then just start pushing, I think. But he's able to swing the rook over. That could have been a mistake, sacrificing the knight. I don't think that was necessary. Now we have a theoretical position. Probably a theoretical draw, but tough to play. We see both players saved plenty of times for this rook ending. 36 seconds to 21 seconds. Shankland is playing a little bit faster. And Shankland has shown that he is very good at endings. Here we're going to see a push again. I think that we'll see a draw because the pawn is going to be too far advanced. Yeah, it's a draw. All right, another match in the Shankland death match, Shankland-Hess death match. Here we see a fianchetto and then a quick c4. Pawn takes back. Pretty good light squared bishop. The knight moves forward. This might have to be my last game. I have to go to work. I can't believe it. Knight moves to h4. Bishop retreats. Knight moves back to f3. Bishop moves to e3. Rook comes to c1. Rook comes to c8. Knight e5. Knights are exchanged. Pawn takes back. Controlling some key squares, but he needs to make sure that doesn't fall. And this pawn is pretty good now. Not exactly a pass pawn because of the pawn on e2. Bishop takes on a7. Queen moves to a5. Bishop comes back to the center, reinforcing key squares. Bishop moves to c5, trying to trade off that key bishop. Pawn moves up, fortifying the bishop. If he takes back, then pawn takes. It would be a pretty good structure for white. Black does decide that that's his best option. Moves his rook down. The queen moves forward, preparing to overprotect this square. Overprotects with rook d1. Come on, I'm calling it. No, he decides to retreat the knight, creating some trades. Now he could try to trade the rooks off again. He does. This bishop versus this bishop. Well, this bishop is pretty good on its long diagonal, but at the same time the pawns are on these squares. Here a check is played. The knight retreats. The queen now retreats. The queen checks. He could take on a2. No, he decides to defend with the knight. The bishop comes down. Pretty exciting chess. I hope we see king up. No, queen is moved to here. Knight comes back. King moves up. Knight goes here. Knight's coming to c4. If he's able to use his whole army, that would be pretty powerful. This bishop is doing nothing. But then again, this knight isn't doing very much either. The knight comes back. The knight's trying to find a good square. The knight is going for the f5 square. g4 is played. Knight c6. Knight moves here. Bishop here. g5 is played. Pawns are exchanged. Pawn takes back. Bishop takes. Bishop takes. Queen checks. Bishop blocks. Queen moves to this square near the king. Pawn is sacrificed to create doubled pawns. Check is played. King is forced to retreat. G of Shankland is up a lot of time. That's probably the most crucial factor in this position. He's able to take on e5. That seems good. He checks with the knight. The knight could come to f4. Knight is good on f4. The bishop forced to go to f3. He checks down here. And that's mate. All right, 7-4, and I think this is the last game that I'm going to be able to cover. So e4 is played, c6 is played. Hess deciding to play the Caro-Kann. Both players have played the Caro-Kann in this match. He plays c5 immediately. Pawn is taken. The knight comes towards the center. e6 is played, and a3. Bishop takes. b4 is played, and rook. Bishops are on b2 and d3, controlling long diagonal. All these squares towards the king, which is good. You want to just you want to play well, but you also want to. It's good to attack the king in bullet chess because it's an easy way to gain time. That's why he doesn't castle here. He decides just to play h4, h5, attack the knight. This knight is pretty strong right now, but a g4 move could kick the knight. G4 might even just win the knight. I think no. The knight could come back to this square. I think the g4. I hope that he does play g4 soon. Decides to play rook c1, putting the rook on the same file as the queen. I support that much. He does decide to castle. Bishop moves here, so the bishops are exchanged. Now the knight retreats. There's a pretty funky pawn position. c4 is played, exploiting the fact that they're on the same diagonal, but knight takes g3 is a sick tactic, attacking the queen, and it's pinned because the pawn can't take on g3 because the queen would attack the king. So the queen is able to move to g5. f6 is played. h4 takes, and we could see knight takes. We do see knight takes. This knight comes forward to f5. Very good on f5 here. The queen retreats. The queen is trying to defend the king, also defend some weird weaknesses. This was looking like it was an attacking move, but now it looks like a weakness. Bishop takes on c4, which could be good, exploiting this diagonal. Now the e6 pawn is pinned. This knight does get to the center, attacks the queen, but then it's pinned across the long diagonal. He plays f3, and the knight is exchanged. The knight was just too good in the center. So the bishop moves here, and the queen moves to g3. Quite an exciting match. The knight moves here. The queen moves up, attacking some key squares. What can this knight do in this position? The knight is also like hanging, but it couldn't take because then the rook falls. But the rook does fall anyway, and then h6 is played, giving up the rook. But he does have three pretty good attacking pieces that are defending each other, which is decent. Moves the knight here. A check is played. Oh, this king is way too weak. Huge trouble. Check is played. The heavy pieces are coming in for the checkmate. We could just see checkmate right there.